Yippee! What a beautiful day here at Venice Beach. The veritable edge of Western civilization yet again. This is show number 150. And today is Thursday, Jupiter Day, February 5th, 2015. And it is my my good friend, Kelly Lee Phipps, the late Kelly Lee Phipps. It's his birthday. He would have been 44 today. And boy, it feels really good to do this. The past couple of weeks I've had trouble getting on, getting the technical stuff to work. And so now it's like a kind of a crapshoot when I do all that I'm supposed to do and I hit the button and it starts to, whether or not I'm actually going to be able to go on the air. So I'm like, yay, shish boom ba, I get to do the show today. Which we've done successfully 150 times so far since last May when we started this thing. The royal we. So I have some stuff I want to talk about today, and we'll get to that shortly. So, but I wanted to show off because I can. This is the final version of the painting that I've been working on this week. And ta-da, ta-da, ta-da. Now, if this is at all hypnotic to you, then mission accomplished. So there, take that. It was really funny. It was overcast and misty, almost foggy here earlier. And I wanted to photograph this before I took it off the board. And right as I, got it all set up to photograph it and pulled out the camera, shut off the thing here, pulled out the camera and went to hit the button. The sun came out. It was perfect. Couldn't ask for better, So, okay, let's see. So, I let you, the camera sit on that painting for because, in hopes of giving you a moment with it, because it's kind of why I painted it, was to essentially begin. Earlier today, when I was loading stuff out of the car to get, loading up the cart to get here, I had a moment where I just, stared at that painting and let it work on me. 2 days ago, I had a moment. It was either 2 or 3 days ago. What occurred to me is that we we have this amazing thing that happens to us, and it happens to every person on this planet, just about every day. And it's an amazing thing. We have a couple of different names for it, and I started to, while I was in this state that this thing is, I was meditating on it. I was getting some insight as to what this thing was in light of all the stuff I've been studying over the past couple of years. We call it daydreaming, which is kind of a neat term. Scientifically, what is happening when we quote unquote is, we're conscious. We're not sleeping, but we're conscious. And the question is, like, of the 4 brainwave patterns, there's delta from 0 to 6 cycles per second. There's theta, which is 6 to 8 cycles per second, or vibrations per second. And then there's alpha, which is from 8 to 10, 11, 12, depending who you're talking to, cycles per second. And then there's beta, which is from 12 on up to 15 or so. And when most people are standing around talking to one another, they're usually in beta. When you're focused in on something and quiet and just kind of concentrating, that's you're in alpha, which is 8 to 10 or 12. When you're the optimum meditative state is when you're between 6 and 8, which is theta, right? And when you're unconscious, you're in delta, between 0 and 5. The thing is that you're actually in all 4 of those at the same time. It's just that at one moment, one of those is more dominant than the other 3, right? So I was daydreaming, and I was focusing in on daydreaming, and it occurred to me, like, that we are most likely in theta. It's like the natural way of achieving a theta state is when you're in that daydreaming, what we call the daydreaming state, right? So I imagined in my daydream that day, I was like, imagine if we started to I imagine like a whole classroom of people, just sitting down and focusing on playing with that state, playing with our daydreaming state, playing our theta state, our conscious, because you're in this conscious theta. You're in the optimum meditative state. Some would say that you're also in a trance, right? So there are certain things visually that and audio in the realms of audio, and probably certain things that as far as all of your senses, I'm guessing, can contribute to creating conducive conditions for you to achieve that state, right? But I think the easiest thing is cultivating daydreaming, right? So it's just so funny because our culture doesn't even doesn't recognize or respect daydreaming, but when in actuality, what's really being called for is for us to spend more time daydreaming. So that's why I was like, imagine a classroom where you're encouraged to daydream. The more time you spend in theta state, the more you're in alignment with with the universe and everything. And so all those times we were in school, you know, especially me staring out the window in my own little world, right? You know, I got grief from the teacher to stop daydreaming. You know, how wrong they were. When in actuality, what needs to happen is we need to encourage everybody to be daydreaming more, right? The more people that are daydreaming, the less war there will be, the less suffering there will be, and so forth. You know, and the thing about it is, you don't have to have money in the bank. You don't have to have food in your belly. You don't have to have any of that stuff, and you can have experienced some of the most tremendous trauma people experience, and still you can do this. You know, and you know what happens when you do it, right? You get all this inspiration, and so when I was in my daydream the other day, realizing the importance of daydreaming, I realized that what's really happening when we daydream. Okay, we're in theta. Okay, and when we're in theta, we have the ability to transcend the physical plane, right? But we can also transcend the physical plane while still being fully conscious of the fact that we're daydreaming. Hello, David. And in other words, we can be in conscious theta, we can be fully conscious of the fact that we're daydreaming. And we can also be transcending the physical plane. We can be receiving information from higher dimensions. And which is what we do. How often have you had a daydream where you realized something that was friggin' amazing that you didn't know before? You know, you essentially tapped into the Akashic record, the entire history of the universe, and you know, in that everybody ultimately knows everything, right? And quote unquote realized something, you know. So yeah. So there, take that.
Sound and it's every day. It's Young Money Rex direction.
Trying to figure out what's the best way to cut this so that waste the least amount of canvas. But reason why that's a concern, let's try this. So the reason I went into all that, I mean, aside from the fact that I've been meaning to do it for a couple of days ago, hello, is that today while I was looking at gazing into the last painting, I dropped into, you know, it inspired a daydreaming session, a trance basically. I let it work on me. And I, you know, was in this trance, and I realized, you know, I saw what the next painting had to be in the series, and I realized that what I'm really engaged in now is a series of trance paintings, to induce that. You know, it's like I feel like it was like a duh moment in that. It's really what I've always wanted to do ever since I was a little kid. is just do more of that, see more of that, you know, and you know, those optical illusion things that make you go, wow, that's really cool, right? That's all I've ever wanted to do with painting. So now, but now it's like not doing it unconsciously. I realize I've done that with a lot of stuff unconsciously. But now it's like, no, I'm painting a series of trance paintings, you know, and that last one was the second one in that series. Hey, what do you think you're doing? What? Back up. You too. No, actually not even cut this. Let's just leave it. Leave it and let it happen. There we go. Excellent. Well, how much battery do we have? 52. Well, we'll get done what we can get done. So, yeah. What I want to bring up today came to me earlier today. I may have talked about this in previous shows, but somebody says I need to bring it up again today. Because I think I brought it up when I was talking to somebody during the show, but a couple weeks ago, I realized something about there's this concept called casting aspersions, and it's, you know, it's a phrase. If we've all probably heard it at some time in our life, to cast aspersions. You know, and we always say it's always been related in the sense of don't cast aspersions, right? And then the question is, what is an aspersion, and what's the root of that word, and where did it come from, and what's it pointing? What kind of body of knowledge is it referencing, right? And in a nutshell, don't cast aspersions. To cast aspersions means, and the whole concept of casting, right? Casting sounds like, you know, you're projecting something out, and an aspersion is obviously platforms, right? You're having thought about the person or the situation or whatever, and that is usually derisive, right? Or derisive, negative, what we would call negative, or bad, or sad, or damaging. And in other words, you know, in some cultures they have terms like in the Polynesian cultures, so it's Hawaiian culture, they call it sky. And you know, to look at someone with stink eye, it's like people recognize that that's not a good thing, you know. And what it is when you're thinking ill of someone, mean, it's known cultures, in certain cultures, that thoughts are real things. The basic principle of metaphysics is thoughts are real things, right? And it's incumbent upon us to not engage in thinking things that are, in other words, we want to be engaged in things that are yummy, and not engage in things that are yucky, right? And somewhere in there is this whole idea that that thought being real things, that we have the power, that everyone has the power to manifest their thoughts, and that that thought is energy, and so that when we're quote unquote casting aspersions, we're casting energy with a specific geometric element to it, that or character that can have an effect on situations, and that it's best to err on the side of caution and only cast thoughts and notions of people, places, things, and whatnot that are healthy and yummy and conducive to the benefit of life, right? Now, this is obviously a challenge for us all, especially when somebody cuts us off. And, somebody, we encounter a person we've had a history of conflict with, and that's where the practice of a discipline comes in, where we obviously need to check ourselves, and what I mean by that is that we come to a conscious awareness of our thoughts and the effect of our thoughts, not only on ourselves, but on our environment, And, I'm all too familiar with this. I know that I personally have a long history of being very, of taking great liberties with the casting of aspersions, I would say. In the past, I haven't been very as forgiving as I could be in dealing with people that have conducted themselves in ways that are have been detrimental to me, and in some ways I literally held the grudge, for years, for decades in some cases, and not only did it hurt the other person, but it hurt me, and because I'm the one that's carrying that energy in my field, and what am I going to do with it? What could I possibly do with that that's a good thing ever? Where is that going to go? But continue to be like a darkness in my, a density in my field. Now here I am trying to leave, trying to consciously project my myself out of my physical body and travel about, conscious projection. That's what I've been trying to practice for the past year. And the main obstacle to that is density, the density that I carry in my field. So I've had to become very conscious of this, of the causes of density and the ways of relinquishing density, Hello. So, and in assessing what I'm responsible for, what I can change in terms of relinquishing density, I don't want to add to, any more density to that which I already have to relinquish. And so I've had to look at those things that are, those traits or tendencies or whatever, reassess them and make adjustments, make some significant adjustments, and in the process of making those adjustments, I've been reminded of different people and sources of information in the world that have given clues to, you know, whose messages have been pretty much the same thing, which is like example being the scripture attributed to Jesus of Nazareth, right? He, you know, he talked, you've got to beat your brother. I'm going to paraphrase because I like to. So if you got to beat your brother, go to your brother as quickly as you can and like clear that stuff up. Well, why would he say that? You know, because who he said it to were the people that he was training to be like him. You know, training to be or activating people to remember who they really were. What was he? He was a person that remembered who he really was as an infinite immortal being. You know, and he said, those, you know, whatever I do, you're going to be able to do even greater things than me. You know, because he realized that he was an immortal, and so is everybody else, and that the only difference between him and anybody else was that most people were still asleep to their true nature, to their immortal nature. The Buddha said the same thing, you know. He said, realize your Buddha nature. Buddha nature is immortal nature. Realizing who you are as an infinite immortal being has the most profound effect a person can have on the rest of the universe, you know. And so, you know, I've come to realize that, you know, not every person in every lifetime is meant to come to enlightenment. You know, that's it. Not only is it unlikely, it's also in some ways counterproductive, because there are people that are coming into life for a specific reason that doesn't have anything to do necessarily with you know, becoming a font of enlightenment. But the more people that do, obviously, the better off we are. Last night I watched this. I watched this movie. It's based on an unauthorized biography of J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter movies and books. And what do you call it? You know, kind of a Disney version. Disney didn't produce it, but it was like a Reader's Digest soft pedal, you know, rags to riches story. But it was interesting to me to see, you know, just the basic outline of life, because I didn't know anything about her. And I've never read any Harry Potter movies, and I've only seen I think I've only seen 3 of the movies. I haven't read any of the books. And, but as a phenomenon, it's incredible. And what's interesting to me is that this person knew as a kid that they were here to write. And as I'm watching the movie, I'm thinking about, you know, in light of the information that I've been blessed to remember about like the universe and everything, is that, you know, what is it? Obviously, it's not for everyone in every lifetime to remember at birth what they're here to do. You know, it's just not what happened so far. Maybe in the future, but right now, most people, you know, spend most of their lives trying to figure out what the heck they're doing here. You know, and most people go through their whole lives without ever having a clue what it is that what all this is for. You know, and not saying that there isn't anything wrong with that. You know, the universe kind of seems to be enjoying that cluelessness. But there are others of us that recognize that there's, you know, this, we could tweak this baby into a lot better shape than what it is, you know. One thing, we could stop killing one another, and we could stop causing one another pain and suffering, right? And then let's get to that point, and we'll see about everybody being, you know. But between now and then, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on that looks to me like it's pretty friggin' pointless or unnecessary, you know. And in terms of well, let me get back to J.K. Rowling. Okay, so watching the movie there, and I started to realize that she, what is it like to be a soul that knows when you're born that you enter in a lifetime, that your job is to wake up as soon as you possibly can to the fact that you're here to write a story, right? You're here to be the vessel for a story. And your whole mission is just to deliver that story. You got one story to tell, and you have to tell that story. That story, spirituality, is going to create a pattern of catalyst. It'll be a catalyst of change in the collective human unconscious, right? Because we are actually hardwired to be affected by stories, you know. And if you take away all the metal and glass and wires of modern technology and everything, just take away all the physical energy, what we're left with is people sitting dark on the earth, telling stories. When we meet one another, we're face to face with one another. What do we do? Our first thing we do, we first greet. And the second thing we do is we share stories, you know. And if somebody is sharing us, you know, it doesn't engage in sharing of stories, we don't spend much time prolonging the meeting. We move on to the next interaction with people until we're engaged in the sharing of stories. So we're hardwired with this spiritual technology of storytelling. So imagine, you know, there are those that say that there's story theory, okay? The theory of what makes stories story, and what makes stories work, and all that kind of stuff. And this town that I'm in right now is the Story Factory, right? This is movies are stories, and movie makers are storytellers, and you know they just use different, more fancy technology to make that happen, right? But
I'm interested in your piece.
it's 1800. 1800. Some plywood, pretty heavy. There's also, if you're in the Flower of Life one, there's one right there. That's $750.
Which one is that?
This one here.
That was 17.
$750. $750.
And that one's 18.
$1,850. Yeah.
I think.
So, so this town is a town that is, it's basically the story creating for the places like that, you know, Bollywood and whatnot. But and in China, you know, they do a lot of creation. You know, this place is a story factory, right? And this town is full of people that are living stories, but also creating them and writing them and doing what they can to share them with the world. You know, you know what I'm saying? And so I was really taken by the question when watching this movie of, okay, there's a soul that agreed little light where they come in and they deliver the work. Today, I just love this kid. He's amazing in so many ways. But what he wrote, you can go to my Facebook page and you can read it. On the anniversary of his dad's 44th birthday, was what he wrote was amazing. And what's amazing about it is a couple things. One, his name is Ariane Brazenwood, or Arian Brazenwood, or however you want to say Ariane, whatever. He was named after the main character of Kelly's astro fantasy novel, Arian Brazenwood. And he conceived of the idea of this novel, actually this series of 12 books, the Arian Brazenwood book being the first one in the series, and the only one that actually got published. He self-published it. And I think it's available on Amazon. He conceived of this story when he was 14 years old. And he was essentially consumed, literally consumed by sharing this story with the world, to the point where he had shelves and shelves and bookshelves of background material in notebooks after notebook after notebook of that whole universe. He had maps. He had globes. Anybody that's ever been to his house, they would see on the wall this huge map that he made of his universe and his the main planet that the solar system. He actually developed an astrology for the solar system, that the main planet is that the story takes place on, that of his the Arian Brazenwood story. But he showed me that where the story progresses into the other. He called it the Star Elf Dodecagy, was the name of this whole constellation of books, this whole zodiac of books, actually. And the Arian Brazenwood story was the Aries story. The first, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, right? So the Arian Brazenwood is the first, is the Aries book of the 12 books, right? The Star Elf Dodecagy. And unfortunately, he was working on the second book and before he died, and it never got finished, right? And I was really concerned about the fact that he was not going to be able to, he was not going to be here to finish that book, because I really want, I know the general outline of the story, and at one point I really tried to help expedite him telling the story by just setting up a camera. The idea, I broached the idea, I came up with the idea of just having him literally tell the story in front of a fire pit, in front of a camera, as though he was telling Ariane the story. And but we never got around to do that, just because I wanted to expedite it. I wanted to, because at the rate he was going, he'd be lucky to have finished it before the end of his life. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened, But in those last couple of months, that he was alive, and I got to spend that time with him in hospice and stuff. We talked about it, and he said that, and I think he might have somebody else, maybe his mother, related this. That the idea was that he was going to leave all the material for his son, and in hopes that his son would finish that story. Now, at the time, you know, Arion, when all this was going down, Arion was kind of, you know, he was in his senior year in high school, and just wanting to be a kid who's a senior in high school and enjoy his time, you know, and everybody involved tried to, you know, empower that, you know, encourage that, and at the time, I honestly admit, you know, I was a bit skeptical because I didn't think that, you know, Arion would ever show any interest in doing anything like that until today. When I read what he wrote about his dad and his birthday and everything, I saw that he's been programmed to fulfill this mission in a sense, you know, and not in a bad, I don't mean programmed in a bad way, but he's been launched in a direction, whether he's fully aware of it or not. In a nutshell, he related this in Kelly's world. Please, you know, the world of the star of dodecahedron. And in the first book, there is a character called the Grey Wanderer, and the Grey Wanderer, I think the Grey Wanderer is based on Gandalf the Grey from Tolkien. And, you know, he wanders the land and does good deeds and tries to inspire people with joy and magic and whatnot, you know? And Aaron pointed out that over the years, he realized that the Grey Wanderer was actually Kelly's inner self, right? And when he realized that, he actually one day confronted his father about this and said, this is you. And Kelly affirmed that that's who it was, right? And so in Arion's post, he encourages everyone to be the Grey Wanderer, you know, to wander the land, bring joy to the world, and, you know, treat people with compassion and magic, right? The way that he articulates this shows such a, you know, an incredible, what's the word, acumen? You know, such a skill of wordsmithery that I was like, dang, brother's got some skills, you know? And if, you know, in time, I know that it's his inspiration that he shared with me last summer when we were at the Rainbow Gathering together to, you know, he wants to build a house. He wants to build a house and raise a family and all that kind of stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised if when he builds that house, it's a Hobbit house. And if there's anybody that could build a Hobbit house, or even a better, you know, Hobbit house 2.0, it would be Arion Brazenwood, right? You know, yesterday when we were talking on the phone, he was like, he had just gotten out of his geology class, and because he's, you know, he's just taking classes in what he wants to study, you know. He's in engineering, but he's, you know, last summer he spent working as a surveyor, right, in Colorado in the Rockies, and he had a magnificent time. He loved every minute of it, you know. And I remember when he was, I met Kelly like 2 months before Arion was born, you know, and so I was around when Arion was born, and so I remember when he was like 1 or 2 years old, he had, or maybe it was 3, he had a computer program on one of Kelly's computers, like a disk, you know, you put it in there and you got this little game, a computer game, right? There was a construction thing, right? And there's a construction site, and the kid gets to move all the construction stuff around, right? And all these little orange guys with the beanie hats and, you know, construction hats and everything. And when the trucks back up, they make the beep 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 sound and everything like that. I'm like, I was blown away, you know, at the time, I have to say. and I have to say, ever since then, Arion was so into that game. You know, he said, look, Dad, you know, and he'd be playing with his, so here it is, you know, he's kind of like J.K. Rowling in the sense that he's been, you know, he's this soul that agreed to come through this vessel of his parents, one of whom happened to be, luckily, was Kelly Lee Phipps, who had this obsession about his universe, you know, and, you know, verbally had been telling the story his whole life, and hopefully someday that story will get told, you know, so that everybody can appreciate it. So anyway, I see the battery. I got like 5% on the battery, and yesterday it cut out at 3%. So I should better say my farewell. So tomorrow is Friday. Thank you for listening to all of that. And I know I didn't get to, but I'm going to be painting while after this is over. So get something done. Get something on canvas before the end of the day. So tomorrow is Friday, and I think it's tomorrow Friday, or no, it's tomorrow Friday because Christmas came by today, and that's Thursday. And the Christmas, the Korean Christians that march up and down yelling Jesus, or Jesus, or however they say it. Life is so weird, isn't it? If you go through a day and don't have at least one moment where you realize just how friggin' weird life is, then you know you need some, you know, stick your finger in the light socket, because you know, you need a vacation, you need some foot massage, you know, you need somebody to, you know, give you some joy, show you some joy, because life is so friggin' weird, man. One person. And once again, thank you for listening. And we put that there. And we're staring into the little hole. And we're sending you love. Thank you. And remember, love you.